Everybody to our session today about the state of organizational culture. We did a survey. I don't know, we launched it it was almost 2 months ago. So we've been collecting that data and we're going to take a deep dive into the results of that. But we want this, our mission is to really create an interactive and kind of roundtable experience, which is why we are at a table. So we really want to hear from you and talk with you about what's happening inside your organizations, any challenges you're facing, and we want to share what is going on with what we're experiencing out there in the field. So my name is Kathy Ketcher, and I'm with an organization called Career Life Alliance Services. I started this company in 1984 with a mission to support women in the workplace because that was a big deal in 1984. And I have migrated. Yeah, it's a huge deal. Yes. So I have migrated and changed and adapted with a big focus in the last 15 years on workplace flexibility. And then the pandemic hit and then everybody got it. So we all got workplace flexibility, and now doing just a little bit of reverse engineering, getting people to come back into the office. So it's been quite a spectacle, and I'm really looking forward to telling you what I am experiencing and what I am seeing out there. But before we get started, again, I just want to encourage you, ask your questions, share your experiences. You can do that in chat. And Rachel, like I said, we got Rachel here to help out. And so if you want to unmute and share something, go ahead and raise your hand and she will do that. And I'm going to ask Meryl and Jess to introduce themselves next. And while they do that, I'd be really grateful if you would share what company you're with, what your title is, but most importantly, give me a sentence about what brought you here today. We know your time is the one thing you never get back. So we're grateful to have you here, curious about what made you attend today. So with that, Meryl, you want to?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And Kathy, thank you for hosting. I'm so excited to be here today. I want to let everyone know this is a rectangle table, but we call it a round table, but it's all good. I'm CEO and co-founder of FlexCats, and my firm is a full-service human capital organization that partners with companies to help them sustain and scale workforce models and workplace transformations. And very similar to Kathy, we have definitely grown and ebbed and flowed based upon what organizations are looking for in their human capital. And it's been quite the journey. And I think it's an exciting time, actually, to really lift up some of the conversation and to really create some new norms in organizations. So again, it's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to a wonderful dialogue and a great set of questions that I know will come to us.
Oh, yes, yes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jess Westley, and I am the founder of Journey West Strategy. Recently left corporate America after 15 years to focus on really helping organizations understand their employees and create exceptional and positive experiences. My background is in insight strategy and customer employee experience. And so really excited to be partnering with these two lovely ladies to truly understand what's happening with employees out in the world and the workforce, how it's evolving, and then how do we create solutions that are unique for different companies. So welcome.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Rachel, yes.
Yeah, so we've had a couple of introductions here in the chat. Michelle tells us that she heard this through word of mouth. Sheila Westcott says that she is here she's a learning and development manager at Maycom, and the title of the webinar caught my attention. So intriguing. Jennifer Frown at the Boston College Center. Hi, Jennifer, longtime collaborator and a fan of Kathy Ketcher.
Thanks, Jennifer. So that's awesome, and it's interesting that the title caught your attention, because as we were getting ready to do this, we know something, we are seeing something kind of strange happening in the workplace today. We're brainstorming. What do we call it? What are we gonna, can we? And so just after some brainstorming, because we're super smart, we came up with the culture cliff, because it really does feel like organizations are at a tipping point. Are they going to fall? Are they going to fly? Do they have any idea they're on the cliff's edge? Because I know as I'm talking with organizations and working with their employees, there is that the employees, well, everybody, let's not just limit it to employees. Everyone's been on a roller coaster ride, right? Throughout the pandemic. And according to a Gallup poll, and we're going to share, we're going to do some citing here of some research, and we're going to share this in our deck after the session is over. We're going to email it to you. But according to this recent Gallup poll, it says the share of employees who said that their company cares about their overall well-being has fallen dramatically from 50% in the early on in the pandemic. People, because, you know, remember the CEOs, they're in the kitchen, they're going, we got you, we're in it together, right? Has fallen dramatically to half of that now that we are completely putting the pandemic in our rear view mirror. And I think a big part of that experience for employees is because that management, the leadership voice went from, we got you, to, well, we're mandating that you please, you know, that you get back into the office. Some are very kind and saying, you know, work your way back, we'll do it slowly. Jamie Dimon's out there, just, you can't, there's no other way to work. You're not going to get ahead unless unless you get back in the office. So it's really, I think what is happening is these employees who did, and all of us, we gave it our all during the pandemic. We did our very best to carry ourselves and our organizations through the crisis. And now it's behind us. And when I'm speaking with employees, what I'm hearing is they say, I feel like they're brushing aside. They're brushing aside all that goodwill. They're brushing aside all my good work. And now they're just saying, new rules apply, come into the office. And I was trying to come up with an analogy. And what I came up with is, imagine, if you will, US Bank, right? So US Bank, big bank. Now, the executive team, they get together and they say, I feel really disconnected from our clients. I feel like they're not getting the financial support that they need. They're not building a good community as our clients. So let's do this. We're going to shut down online banking and all the ATMs on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And on those days, they have to come to the bank. And that way we can see them and know that they're doing well. Now, I know it's kind of a crazy examples, but as I'm talking with the individuals today, the employees, the frontliners, that is how they're feeling. So I'm looking forward to digging into this, to hearing from you and to understanding what we can do today and going forward that we're not, that do differently, I should say, to bring people back together, because it feels very disconnected out there. Jess, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say, a lot of the things that I've been reading and just what I've experienced is work today serves a different purpose than it did in the past. And especially as you look among the different generations, like how do we really think about going from a workplace to a place of community, as an example? But like you need to start thinking differently around what work truly means to your employees, and then how does your company values and purpose support that and make that a unique experience for them. And so there are things that are changing, and the workforce and the workplace is changing, and we're hearing a ton about engagement, right? We've all seen those numbers.
Yeah.
That engagement's at about 30%. That means about 60% of employees are not engaged. What's driving that? What do they need? What are their motivators? And truly understanding that is just going to be even more important than it has been in the past.
That's a great point. Absolutely. It's interesting. I think it depends on the kind of organization that you're running. If you're a CEO, are you solving for people or place? And if you're solving for people, you're going to use words like culture and workplace experience, employee experience, and you're going to talk about the future of work. If you're solving for in-office presence, you're going to talk about space, and you're going to talk about return to office. So I think that there's a mix that we're seeing of organizations that are taking a different stance, and they're starting at a different point. Those solving for performance and productivity and engagement, which is about people, they should be using and viewing space and technology as enablers. which then can result in different decisions, investments, and outcomes. So I think it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg, where are we starting the conversation? Where are we investing the time and energy? And how are we organizing ourselves to deliver?
Yeah, sounds good. Okay.
So I'm getting some chat here, saying
you
how
want to hear.
fabulous you ladies are looking.
Oh,
That seems to be unanimous. Yeah, that's several.
We'll take it. Thank you.
And also one of our participants is looking forward to hearing more about projected organizational trends and strategies.
Okay.
All right. And if anyone wants to share their experience, so what we just kind of did some level setting and talking at a high level. This is what we're seeing out there. And if you want to share anything that you're seeing inside your organizations at this time, you can go ahead and do that. We would welcome any experiences that you can share. So in the next moment, we're going to share our poll results. As I said, this is we kept it open for quite a long time. This is by no stretch of the imagination scientific in any way, shape, or form, but we really did want to understand what are the priorities for organizations today, for people that are inside and trying to figure it out and trying to go forward. And I don't think we have any surprise here. If anyone is surprised, raise your hand. But number one was the employee experience and employee engagement. Anyone shocked? What are we seeing, Rach?
Oh, here, run that by me again.
Oh, no worries. I was just wondering if anyone was surprised by that outcome. And it's so we have the employee experience engagement. Then we have the future of work and hybrid work. That's messy. It was interesting because before the pandemic, lots of organizations kind of had that figured out and they were in their groove. And then the pandemic, and now this post-pandemic experience, they're wondering, what do they have to do to course correct or get the situation into a place that everybody is happy? So that future of hybrid work, that's number 2. And then number 3 is leader and manager. And I think right now, middle managers, I feel so sad. They're really middle managers are definitely stuck in the middle because they have an executive group for most organizations, many organizations, I don't want to generalize, who's saying, get the people come back in the office. And then on the other side, they have their direct reports who are going, why do we have to go back? Why does it have to be 3 days a week? Why? And so these guys are like, I feel sad. So there is definitely a need for middle manager support, but definitely some leadership development. Number 4, and this kind of surprised me because it's been in the headlines a lot, was the employee well-being, right? Employee well-being, and then we drop down to organizational and change readiness, so important. And lastly was the employee skills gap, which we've been, hearing some rumblings about. But what surprised me, I think, is that the well-being was only at number 4. Because if you want your employee engagement and your employee experience to improve, it seems like, you kick well-being in the tail and make sure that's something that you're focusing on, and that will completely change, I think, the employee ratings or experience. Go ahead, Rach.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of reaction here to some prior comments. One person saying, I love that you use the language employee community versus workforce. And someone else really asking the $6 million question, how can we bridge the mismatch between employee desires for continued remote work and leaders' push to RTO?
I can grab that a little bit. Can I grab that last piece there?
Absolutely.
Let's just do that. And I love the community piece. And I know, Jess, you'll talk a little bit about that. I think that there's a few things. I think that when you take a look at what executives want, it depends on how hard they want to push, right? I've heard a lot of things like executives say things like, we would like you to come back, or it would be great, or the expectation, but there is, and they make that message right to the employee. And as Kathy just pointed out, the manager is the linchpin. It manages that individual that's going to make this happen. And I feel, and I think we all do, that there's a missing piece there. So there has to be clarity about what the expectation is and then give the managers the ability to make it so. And there needs to be that autonomy. There needs to be an understanding of the team dynamic. We'll talk a little bit about this in a moment, but we don't have a one-size-fits-all workforce. We definitely have a different group of people in the workforce now. Gen Zers are coming in. We have boomers in the workforce. And then we also have people that are expecting different things from their leaders. So Kathy talks about messy. It's a bit messy for managers. They have a lot to manage and a lot to deal with. So it's really important that there's an alignment among what executives want and believe across. They don't have to agree, but they have to align. And they have to get that message down to the managers, give them the support, the training, the upskilling, the messaging, and the autonomy to make it so. And I think that starts to close a bit of the chasm, but there has to be consistency in how that's all done.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think to add to that, the reality is there's a lot of hybrid tensions that are happening. I was in corporate America. I lived through this and as a middle manager and managing a team up and down. And we talked a lot about those hybrid tensions and what are they? And I think having the support and the conversations and the community around that with others is super important, and being really authentic and transparent about it is important. And I would say also, just like, how do you get to the training and system best practices so that managers are set up for success and feel like they have what they need to truly manage in this very different environment?
I think there's an opportunity for companies to revisit their competencies now that we're much more in a hybrid workforce, and not just assume people are going to, managers are going to just flip on a dime and create all this new, opportunity. It's an important investment, I think, to make into managers. And I think that we have to look at the competencies, and we have to look at how rapidly the world is changing. AI, multiple generations in the workforce, cybersecurity issues, time to fill, all these different risks are starting to happen, and it's affecting the way people respond to the workforce, and managers need to be better equipped to take care of that. And the investment is really, really important. I see that as being one of the most important investments companies can make today.
Great. I wonder if it would be anybody would want to share from the chat or the room, even coming off mute, of like, what are you doing? What's your company doing to help managers succeed and manage through this process? Any best practices?
Go ahead and raise a virtual hand and I'll unmute you if you have a story to share.
Yeah, if we have, and while we wait for that, I just want to add, I mean, really, the question is, how do we bridge the gap? Right? How do we bridge the gap? Well, as with any gap, something has to move, correct? And I have a personal opinion, it's going to come as a shock to Jennifer, that they have to, organization leadership, they have to be ready to move. Remember in the pandemic, I mean, they would do anything to support because, that's what they had to do. And now as we enter into this economic uncertainty, and we've seen layoffs in the tech, leaders are feeling like they're getting their legs back under them, and that they have the power, if you will, to begin to mandate us, a return to the office. And they can do it because they have the power, but do they understand the true impact that it is having on their front line, on the employees? And I'd be curious to know, because we have done so much. We have done so many focus groups and polling, and what do you want employees? What do you want employees? And they're very articulate. It's not, they're not asking for everything. Their ask is reasonable, and we bring it to the leadership. And I have heard a leader say, I will not, my organization, this company will not be directed by the sentiment of an employee. So I feel like someone has to break that wall down a bit, and perhaps today it's not surmountable, but to make the executive leadership better understand that it'll be okay if we can all get aligned, as Meryl said, we all get together and support it. So just gathering data from your front line and doing your very best. What do they listen to? Let's see, what is it? Data is king in the boardroom. So whatever data, and money talks, right? So whatever data equals money that you can, speak that language to show the risk, perhaps. But that's gonna be the only way I can really see the gap is executive has to move a bit.
Yeah, I would build on that. I think when we've seen large scale transformations where the CEO is clear on the goal and clear on an outcome, and they assign a cross-functional team to attack this. And I see the opportunity for companies to not just say, okay, facilities, it's yours to handle, you go fill the seats. And I just ran a roundtable group with about 12 different heads of facilities or facilities leaders across industry. And they're being asked, it's your job to fill the seats. It's your job to get people in. And we know that that's not a reasonable request, right? Because that's not a motivator to just tell people to come in. What is motivating is to think about having a people-centric workplace and think about pulling together a cross-functional team that's going to look at the culture, look at the opportunity to create engagement and experience, and put together people from learning and development, people from human resources, people from benefits, people from wellness, and start to think about what's the value proposition, what is the type of organization we want to be. We have to remind people they've been away for years and now they're coming back, and we have to remind them why this is the place to be and why it's better than being home, right? If you have a comfortable home and great technology and, great real estate and you can put your head down and do work, that's terrific. But a community, right? What does a community give you? It's people-centric. And, there was a very interesting graphic, and we'll send this over to you in our follow-up by Gartner, and they talk about something called the human deal framework. And they talk about different things that, that people say and feel that are really, really important. The fact that they want to feel understood, they want to feel autonomous, they want to feel cared for, they want to feel invested. And how are different parts of a company solving and answering that question, right? How does L&D make people feel that they're developing? How does wellness folks make people feel that they can bring their whole selves to work, et cetera? So I think that there's a whole opportunity here, and we will do this work. I know I'm making a shameless plug, but we will do this work around wellness and around engagement and around all those types of things.
Rach?
Yes.
All right, I've got Linda Hogan here who has a question for you.
Hi, I have sort of a question comment because I think that we're talking so much about being understood in the workplace. And, when I'm doing my coaching, I'm speaking to so many women of all different generations and ages, and they're all facing different obstacles or challenges, whether it's young families, whether it's people that are older and empty nesting. Everybody's facing something different, elder care, et cetera. I believe that many of them are looking for the organizations and the employers to respond to what they need, and they want that continued flexibility. I love the word community. I think it's really meaningful because people are looking for connection again. They've lost that during the pandemic. I'm curious to know what you're seeing and what, if there's any data in the research that you've done on some of the wellness offerings that employees are interested in and what their expectations are around that from the employers.
Awesome. Let me, I want to respond to your question about the poll because we had another question pop in about the poll, and it said, who was this poll? So as I said, this was not a scientific. I didn't get Boston College to come and help me with this research, but we did invite probably 1,500 people to ask, and we just wanted to ask this one question. So Linda, we don't have any
data on wellness,
but we can speak to that because we've seen what organizations are doing and what is working. But I want everyone to consider wellness for a minute, because organizations have a tendency, and feel free to disagree, to wave their hand around and say, here's the money, let's find the solution. And that is, that's nice when there's resources, we all love that, right? But that's not necessarily the real solution, because I think if an organization, we have burnout, our people are stressed, we've got a lot of attrition. And so they say, okay, let's go subscribe to a wellness program. And we love a good wellness program. And I do wellness workshops. Rachel does wellness workshops. So we're not saying it's not a great solution, but what they're not doing is they're not fixing what's broken inside the organization. Are you understaffed? Do you think a wellness workshop is gonna help overwork if you are continually understaffed? So I always encourage every organization, look inside, find out what your trouble is inside. You have more control over that than you think, and it can be fixed. And I have helped many organizations, you do that assessment, what's broken, well, let's tell you. But anyways.
I couldn't agree more with you. I think that, we can keep making offerings, but then if no one's using them, because we haven't created a culture where it's safe to use them, where it's welcome to use them, or where you're creating a culture that's flexible to allow people those opportunities to take the time and demonstrate it through your actions, not just your words. And so I think that's a balance, because in what you're saying, there's a systemic change that has to happen in the mindset of a lot of those executive leaders.
Yeah, and it's hard work. And I know you were gonna.
No, I mean, I agree. I think wellness is one of the key components, but there's so many other pieces, as you were saying, Linda, as you think about that total experience from an employee. And if there's some of their basic needs just aren't being met and they're not feeling safe or that it's trusted, it's hard then to, I think, take advantage of some of those wellness offers. And so how do you think about it holistically so that you can truly serve the entire, workforce, them as whole humans, I should say.
Yeah, the other thing I might say is also we have to look at the life stage and life cycle of people when they come in and really map some of these offerings and do that in a way that's intentional. You could put out a webinar on something and just invite people and they come and they go, but are managers looking at the whole person?
Right.
And to your point, chicken or the egg, right? Am I feeling stressed when I come to work and I feel better, or is stress making me feel that I can't be working? And again, I'm not suggesting managers should become, psychologists, but sometimes they are, but there's a fine line, but there is the opportunity to understand the whole person and to do that. And listen, in the UK, they were very, very big on, talking about menopause in the workplace. And that became something that now we're starting to talk about here. Mental health and wellness was something we didn't talk about in the workplace. Now we do. So we're trending, and I think we're trying to do better, but we have to be more targeted and more systemic in how we do that.
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
All right, we have a question from Stacy. Stacy, you could unmute yourself if you wanted to ask it. Otherwise, yeah, go ahead, Stacy.
Hi, yeah, so I have a question just around, as we think about people who lead culture and how that has been, I think HR has been rebranded a little bit as being kind of the culture officers, right? And so I'm curious, how well do you think that HR leaders are equipped to be able to actually conduct a culture audit, or to be able to even lead a potential transformation when, again, their roles have changed a little bit or are continuing to evolve?
I think that
Go ahead.
HR it depends on where you work, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Some people are still in the personnel department and doing the risk assessments. Others are, doing culture and but I think HR, first of all, has access to a lot of really basic data, the data lakes that are out there, that they can begin to build a story. But I know that many of my clients have really leaned into the pulse check technology and different technologies. And so they are zooming down into their employees' lives much more frequently than they were. So I think that helps them begin to develop a picture. And I wasn't sure if I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No. I agree with you. And I think what I was going to say there is like HR can lead this, be the owner or lead that strategy. But I think it has to be the whole organization, like you were saying, Meryl. Like, it's not just HR. This is a company-wide initiative, and you need to come together. Everyone has learnings and everyone has a different piece of the puzzle. And so I do see in some companies where HR will take the helm on leading the strategy around creating this more holistic employee experience, but it is it's a company effort.
Absolutely. And I think the other part is like you just said, it's a partnership within and outside. And I think in some cases, what we see is that somebody will get assigned, do this culture audit, right? And then either the head of HR feels that they might not have all the resources, or it's hard internally to get everybody aligned, So sometimes they'll call in a third party to try to like at least get the alignment going. And then to do the report out to the executives, because having sometimes a third party doing that objective, kind of report out can be heard differently. So I think it's really about looking at the different pieces of an audit, getting all the data, getting an internal alignment, getting a good template for a good report, making sure it's thorough, and being very mindful of the audience that you're trying to sell on the audit. Some companies, they say they want the audit, but do they want the audit? And then how do you break it down into something that's manageable and implementable?
Yeah.
I talk about priorities and I talk about timing, because that's how you have to be able to do something that is sensible in an organization.
What were you gonna say, Rach? What do you need?
Yeah, I've just had another question come into me here. Our organization does a lot of pulse checks, but we are struggling to respond because there is a pretty big difference between executive and employee sentiment.
Yeah.
And have you seen this in your work?
Yes.
And how have you
Oh,
helped companies move forward?
Well, sadly, sometimes we can't, right? But the ones that we can, the ones that are responsive are the organizations with leadership that is diverse, open-minded, and is willing to take in that perhaps they're not doing it right. They are vulnerable. And we need our leaders to be vulnerable, because we want them to understand they can't control. See, that's the challenge with leaders, and I'm kind of a control freak, ask people. But once you understand what you can't control, you can begin to accept choices and options. And I think that's where the challenge is.
Yeah, and I think to your point, and we talked a lot about, this is a time of just constant experimentation and learning. And so if you really do try to understand your employees' needs and motivators and try different solutions and test and learn and experiment, hopefully like the data shows that ultimately a great experience leads to greater engagement, which leads to happier customers, which leads to financial results, right? And so
We know.
I think remembering that service chain and the outcome is super important. And I think sometimes we just jump to the end of like, it's about business performance and productivity, but the reason to get there is through your employees. Simon Sinek said, your customers will never love your company if your employees don't. And so, there's just that reminder and that testing and learning and what's working and how do we change it? Because we're all just trying to figure this out.
The other thing that's interesting is for a successful initiative, when you talk about closing the chasm, having an executive sponsor is very, very important. Somebody who really does believe in this and is comfortable with change, is comfortable and well respected in the organization. I don't think we've ever done a project without asking for an executive sponsor, not in HR, somebody who's in the business, leading the business, or somebody who is, again, can be very influential. And change management is very important too. We need to meet people where they are and do a real change. We've done this work where we, again, how do you meet people where they are? So it's not about process, it's about understanding the change readiness of an organization. And that helps you more effectively message and prioritize knowing how change ready people are. So those are some other ways I think that we can close some of those gaps between, we have to close those gaps, but we have to be incremental, test and learn, and be very mindful of change readiness and adoption.
Well, I think there's a couple of opportunities when we're talking about gathering data, and there's a tremendous amount of risk, because everything we're saying is, we know this, right? If you eat right and exercise, you're going to be healthier. I mean, if you take care of your people, they're just going to be more productive. So when we pull back the curtain and get in there, and I mean, that's where we have to get to. We have to get into the mess and try to untangle what is the issue. And more, several times, Meryl and I have been the opportunity to work on projects, and we've gone in, we've done a deep dive on an organization. And we gather up that data and we make these amazing recommendations. We know they can do it. And then something stops. So almost more important than gathering that analysis is making sure, before you go to all the trouble, make sure
100%.
that, like Meryl said, make sure you have that somebody in place, because there's really nothing more heartbreaking than, putting all this work and effort and your heart into a project only to have, it die on the chopping block.
And that's where I wonder, like, it feels less risky, I think, to companies and leaders if you can go into like, let's just test this, let's test and learn versus trying to scale things. Because then it doesn't feel like you're forcing decisions for big scale or the accountability. And so it de-risks it a little. And so like, how do you kind of reframe those conversations with leaders to say, let's try this. Let's try this with a group of people. Let's measure. Let's see what this looks like. And so that is possibly, one way to kind of think about how do we help de-risk these big decisions that these leaders are trying to make.
And to work with the business leaders, right? The ones that have the problem, right? And not just make it about, again, an HR move, make it more about what business is suffering. Do they have a retention issue? Is the space not right? Is that whatever the problem you're trying to solve? And then do that test and work out, and then do the metrics and do the pulse surveys and see how that goes. And we're seeing some of that too. We're seeing these little workforce tests going on in companies right now, because to your point, every part of the organization doesn't have the same need to be in every day. Some parts of the organization, if you're in an investment part of the organization, one could argue that being in more than not is very important for the way decisions get made and the way the workflow happens. And others could argue that if you're on a call center, you could do 5 days a week and be out of the office. So we can't do a one size fits all. And we do have to sometimes look at our organization as little groups of people that have certain types of needs and demands based on their clients and based on the type of work they're doing.
Well, and I mean, not very surprising because we live in this big customized world, don't we now?
We sure do.
We customize how we bank, we customize
How we watch TV.
how we watch TV, we customize music, we customize everything. We have a lot of control. So I think we need to be able to customize the way we work and have the support of the organization. And again, there's the challenge, but I would love to hear from anybody in the room who could share a success or an assessment that worked or something, because we've got a lot of smart people who have joined us for this call. So just love to hear any best practices. If you want to unmute and share, I'd love it.
So what's interesting to pick up on that when you think about some smart things that can be done and how to kind of view the whole idea of looking at your organization, looking at the employees and customization. I think that again goes back to the importance of looking at the different types of people in your organization and really making sure that you're plugging into what they're doing. The other thing is, when you take a look at like employee resource groups, a lot of companies use them as mini communities, right? And then you see companies calling them CRGs, customer resource groups. And those creating those mini communities, I think they're coming alive again, for some of the reasons that we're talking about, to create these communities. And people want to be together to influence and provide feedback to the organization. So I think what's old is new again in some ways around some of that.
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, Linda has another question for you. Linda, I'm just unmuting you here, otherwise I can read it out for you. No, here she goes.
Thank you. Sorry. I'm just curious if you believe that there's an impact of the current economic environment that is creating this strong desire from senior leadership to get people back to the offices. If there's any data around that or what you're seeing in other companies.
I said it a little bit earlier. I don't have anything scientific except the headlines that are kind of amplifying over and over about this call back to the office.
Right.
They're getting their legs again. They're getting their legs under them. They're feeling pretty secure about being able to retain the people they want to retain. And and that's my opinion, not, like I said, not scientific, but
I don't remember the exact quote, and I can find it, or sorry, the stat, but it was among millennials and Gen Z, and they're more likely to move on to the next role, resign if they don't have the flexibility and the work-life integration that they're looking for. And so I think it goes back to who are you trying to retain and attract? Like, who are your core employees and what are their needs? And so if you're going to force back into the office and you're really trying to create this positive experience for your millennials and your Gen Zers, it's probably not gonna work, and they have no issue jumping to the next job and leaving. And so I do think there's like that dilemma that you're just gonna have to, again, test and learn into,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
The one last piece I'll just say is I think what we see also is that if you're a conservative leader who does not like workplace flexibility and hybrid, you're going to use the downturn and you're going to optimize it. You're going to use that yet as another reason.
No, go ahead, Rach.
Yeah, I've had another message here. Question. Did organizations see an increase or a drop in productivity during the pandemic? And is that what's driving return to office policies?
I'm gonna give this to Kathy, 'cause I know she's passionate about it.
The productivity has declined for the first time since 1971 in the year 2022. And you can Google Department of Labor, but again, I have a link to that as well. But I think productivity was fine during the pandemic. That fluctuates like the market does, everything fluctuates. But it went up and down, and now it's just 2022 rounded down. And that was in a, I don't know if that was the professional segment of the population. I would have to go back because my memory is not, the best. But anyways, yes, productivity went down. And actually, I do want to take a moment here because I do want to cover the next piece, which is talking about the future of work and hybrid. So Rachel, if you pop down there and open up that poll, I would love to understand what those of you who are on the call, I want to understand what the experience is inside your organizations. Are you, is it, everybody get back in here? Is it come back, we're coming back hybrid and these are the days? Is it led by your managers? Is it driven just simply by employee choice? Or perhaps you are a completely and fully remote organization? But it is interesting. And for those of you who might be going through some mandate, I just would like affirmation, because I like affirmations. If you are experiencing a struggle with that and pulling people back in, or if perhaps you have the magic key and you have unlocked how to bring people back together without creating waves or making small waves. How are the polling coming? Huh. Can you see the poll? Can someone unmute and let me know?
I was able to submit my response to the poll.
Huh.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, well, let's just pretend it's working and hit end poll and share, and let's see if we get results. Okay. That's weird. Do you see the results? We only have one view, so can anyone see the results?
Yes, I can see the results.
Brilliant. Will you walk us through them?
Absolutely. Looks like 33% said that it was company mandated return to office full time.
Wow.
Yeah, 17% company mandate 2 to 3 days per week. 17% for managers are asked to lead the return.
Mm-hmm.
0 for employees decide when to return. And 33% fully remote.
33% fully remote.
Yes.
Awesome. Interesting. That is so
Thank you.
interesting. And I really appreciate you facilitating.
Yeah, no problem.
So who is, if anyone is willing to come off and who has this full return to full-time mandate, and would be, like I said, our goal is to have really kind of transparent discussions, but to share the experience of what that is like and what you are seeing. And if you have found any ways to alleviate what can be a pretty stressful time for both managers and employees. And we'll sit here quietly until someone answers.
No pressure.
No. No. Okay. All right. Oh, good. Thank you.
I do have a question here. What is the fairness of return to office policies if some of the team were hired remotely and therefore can't come into a local office?
Isn't that an interesting question? I don't know if anyone wants to take it. I certainly have an opinion.
I'll just start, if that's
Okay.
okay. Some organizations immediately allowed for remote, but they didn't necessarily talk to their human resources officers. In some cases, the managers kind of kept it on the low key, kind of kept it low key and just said, sure, you can do it. They didn't want to lose people, right? And sometimes this kind of snowballed. And then when we kind of got back together, companies were like, wow, we went from being in 2 states to like 30. And now we have to solve for some different areas. So that's one thing. I think what I can say, I think we all would agree that we never really say to companies, that remote is the solution. I think remote is oftentimes a retention opportunity. If people are leaving the organization, they're top talent, they have a trailing spouse, remote is an opportunity to keep that person. Hybrid, some form of hybrid seems to be like the best kind of answer. But again, it depends on the business area and the situation. So I don't know how you feel, if I've challenged you or if you agree, please.
No, I do agree. And working with some organizations that we all remember 2021, 20, the Great Resignation. Organizations were really struggling to retain really good talent. I mean, we're talking your IT professionals, your engineers, your highly skilled workers. They were hard to come by, and promises were made. And people sometimes under the radar would relocate.
Yep.
And sometimes organizations would make promises, and we have a particular client who is now retracting those promises. And it really, what it boils down to, the organization can do whatever it wants, and it will. But what we're finding, it's probably a 50-50 blend. Some of our clients are saying, okay, they're in Florida, we can't get them to come back, and they're a vital piece of our organization. And so they go ahead and set up the payroll and all those processes that have to go when you have an employee in another state. And I have seen a great increase in acceptance of this. So I think they're getting there. But there's still plenty of organizations out there saying, darn, you'll have to sell the place and get back here because it's back to the office time. So very interesting. I don't know, Jess, if you saw, I know your company was pretty.
Target, yeah, Target is still virtual.
They are very flexible.
Yeah, very flexible, still have a virtual first, as far as I know, virtual first environment. And I think that just shows, it really does think about the people and their preferences. And I will say, one of the things that's really important when you think about that is being able to hire the diverse talent. And so I will say, being in the Twin Cities, that was really challenging. I worked with several local corporations here, and when we were able to hire remote, it just opened up the population and the diversity pool, and it brings such good different perspectives to the work. And so it's really important, I think, for companies to continue to think about that. So you don't just have this one
right there.
group.
This one community.
The other thing that we've seen too is companies that want to get rid of their real estate, right? So they have no choice but to give everybody that ability. So again, that chicken and the egg, we've seen companies that are taking down lots of real estate. And then as a result of that, people are having to work remote and can work remote because of that.
Okay, what?
Another question here.
Sure.
In your opinion, is there a sweet spot for optimizing culture? Is it by allowing employees free choice, or is it by mandating a certain number of times per week or per month?
I think it goes back to a little bit about the customization. I'm like, how do you customize an experience that works for the employees? As we talked about, like this idea of communities have changed, the definitions of communities has changed. You can have communities that are virtual, you can have communities in person. Your community doesn't just have to be your immediate team, it can be others that are in the same life stage or in the same type of role as you. And so I do think there's just an opportunity to think about it maybe in a little bit more of a customized way. I don't know, what do you guys have anything to add?
No, I don't.
Mandates are never good. Nobody wants to be mandated. So
Well, yeah,
so
I mean-
the mandates aren't good. Empowerment again, at the leader level to evaluate, and make some of these decisions. So that's to me always the place to start.
And I'd like to, I mean, again, because we had a nice result from the poll, we have a percentage of folks on the call who did mandate. And then we have an equal percentage of people who are fully remote. It would be interesting to hear how their culture is doing right now. So I'm guessing with fully remote, you've got some strife and some things as you continue to create a community when we don't have a place. And if anyone wanted to pop into the chat, I don't know if you can do it anonymously, but just share, you know, as a mandate organization, we're struggling, or as a remote organization, we're struggling. But we all know all we want in the whole world is to have, or just choice. We want control. And I think when people are losing their control, you know, things go downhill. No surprise about that.
Yeah, they can message me individually if they don't want to share with everybody else in the chat.
Yeah, perfect. All right, do we, any other questions?
Yeah, I do. Here's one. How are organizations measuring the success of their return to office? Is it by badge swipes or productivity, or what kind of metrics?
That's another one that organizations are kind of struggling to solve. And I know, Meryl, you're close to that.
Yeah, well, there's badge swiping for sure, in and out. I had one organization that they just badged in, which is not a smart move if you want to know how long people are staying in the office. But definitely badge swiping. Engagement surveys are being expanded, right, to really kind of understand just employee sentiment, pulse surveys and whatnot. So I think it's been a combination of just kind of keeping on top of the activity.
Right, yeah, it's pretty kind of cold data driven. Badge swipes, consumption, how much coffee we're going through, and food, and you know, just and then also with events, lots of organizations, and that's a brilliant idea. If you are pulling people back into the office to create experiences and events where people can come together, because you know what? Lots of people forgot what it was like to be together. And it is, and this is something I tell all my clients who are going, nobody's coming in. And it's like, let's take a breath. It could take 2 years for people to figure out whatever is their next normal, whatever they're most comfortable with, or for 2 years for them to get comfortable with what the organization is mandating. But I think it's so wise for organizations just to calm down and take a beat and allow people to unravel from, you know, we've all been in this kind of crazy, tight, under the table, fear-driven world, and it takes a long time to unfurl. So I really hope, and I think that would be one big tip is for you, if you could talk, as you talk with your leadership, is to say, it's gonna be fine. Whatever it turns out to be is gonna be great, as long as we continue to support our people, but please give them time. And like I say, time, 2 years. And people could start. It took us 2 years to create all our new habits. Almost 3. We created a lot of different habits during the pandemic. We have to undo all those habits. We have to create new habits. It's not going to happen overnight. So it's important, so important for leadership to just calm down.
And I think we don't want to undo the new habits, right? Like,
No,
I
there was
think
some
you
good
just-
stuff.
There was some really good stuff, and I think, you know, that's something that we need to acknowledge and build on, right? And not try to undo it, because we are living in a new normal, if we like it or not. And I think it's just gonna, you know, jumpstart the future of what's
Right.
next.
And we have, I don't know if anyone has thoughts about AI. But that elephant just stepped in the room. I mean, I kind of knew it was coming, but it was like going paperless back in the 80s. Everyone's going to go paperless, and they kept saying, and we never did. But anyway, AI is coming, and it is here, and it is just blowing my mind. I don't know how it just got on my radar, but it's frightening, and it's going to have a most incredible impact on the employee communities and on organizations. And are we going to be out of a job? It's interesting. And if anyone has thoughts or questions on that, I am all ears, because I think it's just fascinating. As you said, we don't even know what's next. Nope, okay. All right.
What time is it?
Well, we
Okay.
only have a few minutes left, so if anyone, I hope we did a good job unpacking, you know, some of the information that we shared. We I don't know if we solved any problems, but I hope that we got a good discussion going. We hope we gave you something to think about. And if you have any questions or anyone has any closing comments that they are willing or interested in sharing, we'd be so grateful. But we can't thank you enough for your time and attention. Like I said, time is precious and priceless. So we are grateful that you were able to join us. And ladies, if you want to, any
Yes.
last words?
Thank you for joining us, and I think this idea, I know of community that we talked a lot about, just really being cognizant of how are you helping your employees really feel a sense of belonging, and I think that does come through the communities as well, and however that's defined. So that's, I think, just a really important aspect as we continue to unpack this in the next 2 years
2
and
years
more.
and more, right?
Absolutely. And I would just close with alignment and collaboration across the organizations. Not one person's job to solve this. It's an opportunity to bring the right people together who are people-centric and understand the importance of culture and human capital to solve for that versus just solving for being in an office solely as that being the objective.
All right, awesome. Well, you all get the gift of 2 minutes, so you can go forward and enjoy your afternoon. And we wish you all the best and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Great to see everyone.